I want to start out by taking a look at the two types of files that we'll be importing into Lumberyard, the actor and motion files. So for the actor file, I'm selecting Bert from the starter game. For import options, I keep apply transform unchecked. I check pre-post rotation, and under armature, the only thing that's checked is automatic bone orientation. Looking at the FBX now and ignoring the other LODs, looks like we have the main mesh parented to the armature named LOD0, and the mesh has material and modifiers that aren't applied as opposed. So that's what I'll be looking to recreate with the actor. I'll open up a motion, one of Bert's motions from the same project with the same settings. And I see under the main object there's an animation, an armature, and a pose. I'll limit the animation range to see how it looks here. I've made a simple character mesh in Sorcar, so I'm going to go ahead and quickly step through that just to show off more of Sorcar. I think texture painting will be easier with a lot of vertices to work with that are dense, so I do a lot of subdivision there. Otherwise, I'm really only going for a character that's got legs and some room for some spinal bones. Here I'm adding a little more geometry because I think the legs would be stretching more in that area, but it's probably pretty unnecessary. And here when I'm selecting the feet, I couldn't quite grab the bottom plane, so I do another selection and exclude that selection to end up with just what I want. After I'm done contorting the mesh, I want the legs to lie right underneath the main mass of the body. So I'm going to line them to the x-axis and then lift the entire character up to the xy plane. Last, I apply all the transforms, add a material, and name it. I'll save one copy as the mesh, and then I'll save a second copy to use as the base for the actor that I'll use next. In the actor file, in object mode, add an armature, and then add a bone. I'll keep everything organized by naming it. The bone I just added will be the root bone. In the armature viewport display settings, I'm going to check everything. Now I can see the bone axis, and its name. For the root bone, I'm going to have the tail of it set in Blender in the negative Y direction. But the local orientation will be just like Lumberyard, Y positive, Z up. I'll add a second bone for the hips, and then selecting the tail of the hips, I'll extrude two more. The extruded bones were parented automatically, and they were parented right, but the hips aren't parented to root yet. So I'll select the hips first, and then control click on root, and control P to parent and keep the offset. I'll add another bone for the leg. This one will be pointed down, and I'll rotate it 180 degrees, and then parent it to the hips. I also keep the offset here, and then just duplicate it and move it over for the second leg, and parenting and rotations are all fine. With everything selected in object mode, in the object menu, I'm going to apply all the transforms one last time. I'll save this as a copy of the armature object. Now in object mode, select the top level character mesh and control select the top level armature object. Press Ctrl P to parent the mesh to the armature. And under armature deform, we're going to select automatic weights. Now do the opposite in object mode. Select the armature first and control click on the mesh. If you have any trouble switching to weight paint mode after this, in the edit menu you can set toggle mode lock. Now I can control left click to select a bone and see its zone of influence, or right click will bring up a menu with all the bones. First I'll click on pose to bring up pose mode, and in the tool menu turn on auto IK to see how the automatic weights look, see what's looking good and what's not. So I'd say the legs look pretty good. I'll leave those how they are and maybe just adjust the painting on the hips, spine, and head. To go back to weight painting mode, I'll need to switch to object mode and then select the armature first, control click on the mesh, and then switch over to weight painting. Looking at the existing weight painting again, the hips don't have very high values. It looks like the legs are blended pretty well above it, and they're all red. I'll use the gradient tool to finish up the weight painting. In blend mode, I'll use darken with the weight set to 0 to make things blue, and I'll use add with weight set to 1 to make things red. I'll speed up the next part of the video while I'm doing the actual painting, but you can find the gradient tool in the left tool menu. If I were going to spend more time on painting this, the fall off options in the tool menu and the blur option on the left are great. As well, you can do masking of faces or text groups. We'll take a look at what the painting did. Looks like everything's bending pretty smoothly. The hips are sort of the root of the actual skeleton, so there's no bending right now going on with those. Everything else looks good. So this is ready for export now. See, vertex groups were added automatically. Modifiers and material are there, along with the armature and pose. Everything is in one collection. So in object mode, I can select everything and go File, Export, Export to FBX. I should be able to select Active Collection, but I've got everything selected, so we'll choose that. Importantly, apply scaling FBX unit scale, and then Lumberyard defaults for forward and up. We don't have either apply unit or apply transform selected. Geometry values are default, and under armature, selecting only deformed bones would be optional. There are none, but I'll uncheck add leaf bones, and I'll uncheck bake animation. In Lumberyard, I've started a new level in the Starter Game project. It has all the gems I'll need, and I've imported the actor. I'll find the actor in the asset browser and edit settings to take a look at how it came in. Let's see, the root looks right here. We'll have to take a look at that later though. If I click on that, I can see the mesh and the armature, and everything else is standard. There's a physics slot, but no mesh is selected. I didn't make a mesh expressly for physics yet, but I'll update that one change. And dropping the actor into the level. Looks like everything imported well, including the material. We'll head back to Blender now and create an animation to import. First, I'll save the actor and then save a copy to hold as a base for the animation. The mesh will be nice to have to look at while I'm animating, but won't be exporting it, so I'll move it to a different collection and hide that as necessary. I'll create two new windows for the dope sheet and timeline editor, and I'll set the timeline editor from 0 to 23 frames for a 24 frame animation. In pose mode on frame 0, I'm going to make a walk cycle by just moving the two legs, one forward, one back. We'll tilt the head towards the forward leg, and pressing I with your mouse cursor in the viewport will bring up the keyframe where you can select whole character, insert every bone in the character, or right now it'll insert a keyframe for every bone I have selected, so location, rotation, scale is good. Now we'll move the marker to the 23rd frame and select the root and just move everything forward 2 meters. We'll hit I and keyframe location, rotation, scale again. Now I'll clear my keyframe selection by just left clicking off anything, and I'll select frame 0, everything in it, and deselect the root node by control clicking. I'll move to frame 12 and paste the flipped animation, which should change the head and legs, but it looks like it missed the legs, so I'll change that manually right now. I've got only the 2 leg bones selected when I press I, so it will only keyframe those 2, it won't overwrite anything. And the character is accelerating and decelerating, so I will select the 2 keyframed frames for the root node and change the interpolation type to linear. To export this animation in object mode, select the entire armature and also the main armature object. Exporting the FBX, I'll use all the same options as I did for the actor, optionally selecting deform bones. There aren't any yet. This time though, select bake animation with everything else unchecked and export. Back in Lumberyard, I've moved the exported animation FBX into my project directory, and I'll add the simple motion component. Look at the motion settings. Looks like under motions, just the root, 1 system change modifier, and no actors. So I'll load the motion into the simple motion component and press preview and editor to play. If I hit loop motion, I can see something's not quite right. It is looping back to its position where this motion should continue forward. So we're going to open up the animation editor and go to the actor manager and load the actor that we've made. Under motion extraction joint, see it automatically chooses character armature. So we'll want to switch that to root and save the actor. That should correct that. Now we can see that the animation is driving the character's location. We'll try out slow-mo. I'm a big fan of slow-mo. Now let's build an animation graph that uses this motion. So delete the simple motion. We'll need to create all three of these. Just going to maximize this on the same window. I apologize. So we'll load up our actor. Create a new motion set. With the motion set selected, I'll add a motion, and double clicking on it, I can assign it. I can save that. I can also name it. Alright. Nothing to be done there. Animation graph, though, we're ready to go. We'll start by adding a blend tree. And adding a state machine to hold the motion. Double click on the state machine and add the motion. Okay. Hit play. Now there's an output pose. If I were to connect it, it would go. Now the only thing we need to do is to be able to toggle this on. I'll add a parameter, Boolean, call it moving forward. On the graph, I'll reference the parameter, and probably go about this a couple different ways, but one way is to use a pose switch. And have it output no pose by default. And then if moving forward is true, it'll output pose 1. We can see that. Toggle it on and off. So that's good. We'll save. And going back to the level now, we can load up all three of those. I've turned forward motion on, and now if I start the level, it goes. So we'd like to control this. So the first thing we'll need to add is an input. Open the asset editor, and I'll create a new input bindings file. I just named these the keys. We can reverse this motion, so let's do forward and backward. I'll load up the input binding file. Now we'll need to create a script canvas graph. Oops. This will be pretty simple. We'll add an input handler. Choose them. We don't have a parameter set for going backwards, but we can test going forwards. We press it. We'll need to set a parameter on the input on the animation graph. So under animation graph, expanding this, we'll see set named parameter boolean. This is moving forward. Double check capitalization there. Copy it and release. Set it to true on press, false on release. I'll save this as custom script canvas walk. And I'll load it up on the character. Unset that by default. Save the game and start it. Excellent. So now let's look at the animation graph again and see how we can incorporate going backwards. I'll add a second parameter for moving backwards. I'll create a second state machine as well. I'll add the same motion and reverse it. Zipping back to the blend tree. We'll just add a second pose switch as well. And if moving backwards is true, it won't output the default pose of nothing, but it'll output moving backwards. And now we need to blend these. Blend 2. It will output the first pose by default. It's moving forward. And if moving backwards is true, it will blend to that. There's one edge case that's not being caught here. If both of them are selected, it override. Moving backwards always takes priority. That's something that can be taken care of with script canvas really quick, and that will wrap it up. So I'll add 2 more set name param booleans for moving backward. And to handle that edge case, we'll just need to toggle moving forward off when the other one is selected, and vice versa. So I'll copy this second one. Copy this second one. Put it up here, and I think that should do it. take a look. Save that. Game, press G. Now I'm going to press forward and then backwards while holding forward still. Okay, it overrides it. Whatever is pressed second. So I think that's the correct behavior, at least for now. And thank you for your time. I hope you enjoyed it. In the next video, I'd like to improve the armature with inverse kinematics and take a look at some of the tools within Blender for organizing and going about animation. Thank you for watching.